Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come on down, 'cause we got...
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Spring Training Talk Live, the last Spring Training Talk Live of the offseason. Finally, we are finally here 3 days away from opening day with my boy Chris CP here in the talk and the chat and everywhere today with his Mets flag in the back. And we are only 3 days from opening day. And Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a new week. It's finally opening day week. I'm excited. We can put the off season behind us. We can put spring training behind us. We got a lot to talk about today. It's always a pleasure. And I'm just happy to be here. This is awesome. We got some big plans coming up for this season. Talking Mets baseball. Everyone in the chat, thank you all for supporting. It's going to be a great time. By the way, if you missed my stream on Friday, make sure you go to the community tab on my channel. The giveaway. I'll be giving away some free merch. Go ahead and do that. Hit that subscribe button while you're there, and let's have a great stream, as Grant said in the chat.
Absolutely. And Chris is going to be doing them giveaways, and I am actually going to do an opening day giveaway. On Saturday when we do our pregame show, hopefully at Citi Field if the weather holds up. I'm going to be the Francisco Lindor Garden Gnome bobblehead, whatever the hell you want to call it. I have an extra one that I'm going to give it away to a fan that might be out there. So if they roll up on the pregame show at the tailgate, maybe we'll do some trivia, and whoever wins will win that as well. So maybe we'll have some fun doing that. So I will be giving that away as well as a welcome to opening day special trivia giveaway type stuff. But make sure you do that on the community page for Chris. And make sure you check us out for the pregame show coming up on opening day, which might not be on Thursday, considering the rain and the weather sucks. And God knows we need a freaking dome or at least a retractable roof. That would be nice. But let's get to the real business, our New York Mets. There's a couple of roster spots available. Mostly, it's probably what they've been saying. It's been 2 spots for 3 players in the bullpen that we'll get to a little bit later in the stream. But let's talk about my favorite player ever, JD Martinez, because why not? I know Chris gave me a lot of credit in one of his past stream, the JD Martinez stream, actually, when they signed him. Listen, I'm excited about it. I'm a little disappointed that he's not going to be on opening day. I will give him the biggest standing ovation ever, because why the hell not? But I get why he's going to be down in the minors for 10 days or 10 games to get acclimated to pitches, to starting pitching and just pitching in general, get his timing together and all of that. But the lineups that you've seen that people have been posting ever since he signed just makes it look, let's be honest, sexy. It looks a lot better than it did prior to the Martinez signing. And even though he's not going to be with us for, say, 2 weeks, let's say 2 weeks. And, Vientos, which I'm a little shocked that he was sent down, considering the fact that JD Martinez is going to be down in minus for about 10 to 14 days. JD Martinez is a guy that just puts a whole new dimension to this lineup. And you heard that he's going to be batting cleanup from Carlos Mendoza, and it's going to be, which both of us had the wrong lineup, or at least the top four, right? It's going to be Nimmo, it's going to be Lindor, Alonso, and then Martinez when Martinez comes up with the big club. So let me get your thoughts. I know you've had many videos, many streams about JD Martinez, Chris, and talked about it. But what are your thoughts on the Martinez sign-in and how smart it was that Stearns waited this long and the way he manipulated the contract and the deferments to land JD Martinez, even though he had better options elsewhere? What do you think it really was for him to make the decision to join the Mets? And what do you think Martinez is going to impact is going to be on this team?
First of all, there's a lot to talk about here because one, I did that stream just breaking the news. It was very impromptu, just went on, gave my initial reactions, had no plans of going live, but I had to give you all the credit in the world, Rob, because you sat here countless of times when I doubted you. I doubted the Mets in terms of the whole JD Martinez front. I think this is the very first time that we're actually talking on stream since our discussion prior to that JD Martinez signing. So credit to you, shout out to you. Everybody in this chat that watches us knows that you were always on the right side of this discussion and I was on the wrong side. So props to everybody involved to get that deal done, as well as you for believing. But that being said, it's great to see that he's here because this lineup, like you said, does a 180. I love the top five, the top six of this lineup now, whereas we only love the top four, maybe the top five in the lineup before JD Martinez. So he fixes some of that top heaviness in the lineup, but you still also have to worry about 7, 8, 9. Nonetheless, that's a whole different discussion. I do see JD Martinez obviously also batting fourth. That's what's the best. That's the best lineup that you can trot out there with Lindor, Nimmo, Lindor, Pete, JD, Alvarez, whoever you want to bat fifth, right? If you want to space out the lefties, you can toss McNeil in that 5 spot. If you're comfortable going lefty and lefty back to back, which I know Randy, all things Mets in the chat here. When I posted my projected lineup, I had lefty back to back. It would make sense why they would want to space the lefty out. So then I think it's going to be McNeil as your 5 bat, and then you have Alvarez and then Beatty, right? Or you can just jam sandwich Marte in between those lefty bats. No matter what it is, no matter what the lineup shakeup is, it doesn't really matter because JD Martinez is a true professional hitter. We've been hearing about this a lot, and the current Mets getting notified by Steve Cohen. We know about that group chat that Lindor, Nimmo, and Pete Alonso were a part of, where Steve Cohen broke the news to them that JD Martinez was going to be a Met, and everyone's saying how much JD Martinez studies the game. He studies his own swing. And what I loved most is that the first day we saw JD Martinez at camp, not only did we see a nice selfie with Jose Iglesias, who, by the way, probably will be sticking in the organization, even though he's not going to make the team, which I think we also have to talk about just sort of the dynamics of this organization. G-Man Choi also going to stick around AAA Syracuse, where they otherwise could have opted out. JD Martinez wrapping his arm around Mark Vientos and just being like, hey, man, listen, that signals to me that he's like, I'm going to be a mentor to you. I know I presumably took your job here. I understand that. But nonetheless, that is going to be a great mentorship to see when Mark Vientos inevitably comes up, which I think it would make sense to bring him up at some point in the season. You can't just keep him all the way in AAA unless you do have intentions on just selling low and trading him. But nonetheless, this is a great signing. Truly a professional hitter. I could not be more ecstatic to be wrong about the Mets. You know, acquiring JD Martinez, right? And Christopher, to answer your question in the comment section, I was talking about JD Martinez back when all the DHs were available, right? I had JD Martinez in there with the Solairs, with the Justin Turners. Obviously, I was an advocate for Justin Turner at the time, but as weeks went by, especially most recently, I lost that hope that the Mets were going to do anything in terms of the offensive category. Rob was the one that kept the hope, which I guess you just need a little bit of hope sometimes. And honestly, if the Mets went into the season with Mark Vientos, I wasn't going to be too pissed off, right? Because we always talked about that plan that was in place to see the young players. But I'm curious to ask you, Rob, do you think that this was pre-planned all along, which I think you definitely I think you might, right? I think that because you've been talking about it for so long, or do you think Vientos' play in spring training triggered the Mets to sort of definitely make that decision. Otherwise, they would have been skeptical. Like if Mark Vientos went out there and had a phenomenal, stellar spring training, is JD Martinez a New York Met right now in your eyes? Because honestly, I'm not sure if he would be.
Probably not. But what is curious? There was a report that came out that the Mets offered Justin Turner a contract before he went. He signed elsewhere, and that told me that I don't know how confident they were in their DH Vientos or anybody else that could have been an option at DH. I think they were. I think they always wanted a backup plan, regardless of who it was. I think they wanted a proven veteran, even if it was somebody, even if it was Troy or Voigt. I honestly think that if Vientos, I truly believe that they wanted Vientos to win the job. I think that all the freaking videos they were showing on their social media pages, it was all Vientos. We talked about it. They were shoving it down our throats with Mark Vientos highlights or during drills and working with Lindor and batting practice and hitting drills, all that stuff. I think their plan was to push all their chips in the middle for Mark Vientos, but I truly believe that they were starting to be concerned because the problems that he had last year and throughout his years in the minors was the high strikeout rate, the lack of walks, the plate discipline, regardless of the power. We know the power is there, but you can get a lot of guys to come in that can just provide power. You needed more than just power at the DH spot, especially if you wanted to put that hitter behind Pete Alonso. Vientos, where is the trust to put him behind Pete Alonso, which a lot of people wanted that to happen, considering the fact that he was going to be the DH. You can't trust that. So you're going to see less pitches for Pete Alonso if Vientos was behind the plate, behind him in the fifth spot or the whatever spot he was going to be behind Pete Alonso. I think their plan all along was Vientos, but in the back of their mind, they knew they always had one guy available. And I always think they were, as I said, they were continuing to talk to Scott Boras in regards to JD Martinez. I think they had the pulse of Scott Boras with JD Martinez because once JD Martinez declined to go to San Francisco, there was nobody else out there except for the Angels that was willing to sign him for that particular reason, just DH. And that's why I kept on saying the Mets, I think that they weren't going to get him for the wrong price.
Right.
And I think that $15 million was too much. I understand it's $12 million with deferments and it's only $4.5 million this year. They could have done that with the $50 million if they wanted to. But I think David Stearns probably realized it and reading the room that there was nowhere else for JD Martinez to go. Was he going to go to the Angels and be a disaster in the American League West and just not deal with anything? That's the way I thought it was. So I think their plan was they always had that, I guess, that loaded gun in the back, just waiting for that to hit if they really needed to. If Vientos was doing well, at least I would say above average, I don't think JD Martinez would be here. I think they got concerned 2 weeks ago that Vientos was only showing power and nothing else, and the concerns were still there, and why JD Martinez is a Met today.
So two questions to follow that up and to address what Christopher asked me. Joel, thank you for I guess following that up, because Joel's exactly right, Christopher, in chat asking why I didn't want JD Martinez. I wanted JD Martinez.
JD Martinez. You just didn't believe
I wanted him. I was not confident the Mets were going to deviate away from said plan and everything that we heard from David Stearns and Steve Cohen. And I was honestly content with it because I looked at that payroll. It's like, unless you have a contract that has deferred payments like what the Mets literally just did, then it would have been hard to put even $15 million or even $12 million on the books all for this year. But to go back onto that deferred contract payment, right, taking a page out of the Dodgers book, that's beautiful execution. You bite the bullet on $4.5 million this year, which inevitably with the Steve Cohen tax turns into $9 million. Okay, great. Steve Cohen's going to do that all day long. But when does that money kick in? And honestly, that's not even a 2020s problem for the New York Mets. That kicks in like 2034 or something like that, which is pretty crazy, unless I'm mistaken there. I think it was 2034 that I saw, right?
2034 to 2038 or something like that.
To 2038, yeah. So it's like who cares at that point? Like your team is presumably going to be in good shape at that point, but nonetheless, who cares? We're not looking forward to 2038. It's 2024. This is what we're going to be talking about. My second question, as it pertains to this, two questions. One solely for JD Martinez, and then one bringing Mark Vientos into the picture of things. JD Martinez, when he was going to talk with the San Francisco Giants, I didn't see anything that it was reported that the Giants officially made an offer. Did you? All I heard was that he was seeking $20 million, and that's where they pivoted to Jorge Soler. So who's lying here, right? Is it JD Martinez lying that he just didn't want to play in the ballpark, or did the Giants make an offer, or did they never make an offer? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
It's probably 100% Scott Boras. Like I think that it was always the fact that JD Martinez, it seemed like JD Martinez wanted to come to the Mets. For whatever reason, he had conversations with certain Mets during the offseason. He even talked about it that he worked out with Vientos in that lab or wherever they work out during the offseason. So they knew each other. So I felt like JD Martinez probably wanted to come to the Mets a little later in the offseason. And I think it didn't materialize with the San Francisco Giants. I think they wanted him, but I think it's also true that right center field gap, I mean, yeah, he'll hit a ton of doubles. But he's gonna get hurt in the home run department. And that's where he makes his bucks, let's be honest. If he hit 24 home runs last year, he wouldn't be highly sought after for a lot of teams that are desperate for a power bat in JD Martinez. But yeah, I think that it was somewhat Boras. It was a little bit of the ballpark, and it was a little bit. I think JD Martinez wanted to be a Met probably over the last month or so, and it just had to materialize. And the price that he wanted, he was never getting anywhere else, and he got the team he probably wanted, and the way he wanted the contract, I guess, was worked out. I don't know if it was Stern's idea or Boras's idea, but it worked out.
At this point.
Yeah, exactly.
At this point.
Yeah,
he's a Met. That's all I care about.
Exactly. That's all I care about.
When do players ever admit that they don't want to hit in a pitcher's ballpark? Like, they never publicly admit that, and that's what I like about JD Martinez, because he seems like he has that presence and just that very big, like, honesty, right, factor to him, which I definitely just respect, and that goes hand in hand with being just situationally aware as a hitter, right? We can count on him behind Pete Alonso to know exactly what to do, get the runs in by any means necessary, whether it's a sac fly, whether it's hitting the ball the opposite way on the ground to just drive a runner in with a man on third with less than 2 outs. It's things like that go unnoticed that I think that the Mets really woke up to and were like, Mark Vientos in a situation like that simply wouldn't get the job done as a high of a rate with that strikeout rate that he has north of 30%. And that's not a knock on the type of player and the type of hitter that Mark Vientos is. It's just you cannot put someone like that behind Pete Alonso. Yeah. And I don't even think that Mark Vientos personally, if he was the DH, was going to bat behind Pete Alonso. I think that he was still in line for like the seventh or eighth spot. So
that's the problem. That's the issue. Yes. Like, you can't have a guy that is a predominant DH with no real position, and he's going to be batting 7th and 8th in a lineup. You can get anybody to do that, not just Mark Vientos. So the whole point of Mark Vientos was proving the power was consistent, along with a little bit of getting better in certain areas of the game where he struggled offensively, which was the strikeouts and the low batting average. That's why I think that I always think they were always looking outside the organization for a DH, or at least somebody to put behind Pete Alonso, even if it was, a Choi or somebody that shown a little bit of more consistency at the plate. That's why I was reading the tea leaves for a while. They kept on beating around the bush with their answers, with Steve Cohen and David Stearns. They kept on saying, "Oh yeah, we keep on, we're giving these young kids at bats. We're giving these young kids at bats." But he never said giving these young kids at bats during the season. He said giving the kids at bats. They're getting at bats in spring training. It's basically the same thing. They're getting the reps. So David Stearns never said, "I want to get him major league reps, at major league at bats consistently, or a lot of reps at the major league level." He never said that. So I think he was beating around the bush, because constantly talking to Scott Boras, you have to win the media side of it as well with Scott Boras, and I think Steve Cohen, even Steve Cohen and David Stearns are complete geniuses here with this. They worked Boris as a clown because I truly think that he was trying to get the Mets to get involved to raise the price, and the Mets never budged at all. And the best part about this is that this is why Stearns is here, because of reading the room that Billy Epler couldn't do, that Brody Van Wagenen come and do, and damn sure Sandy Alderson couldn't do, and specifically the Wilpons as well. Sometimes you have to read the room and not just give a player what they want just because you're worried about them walking out the door and not coming back and signing with another team. I think David Stearns had a feeling that JD Martinez wanted to be here, and his last call would have been to the Mets, regardless of whatever deal or offer he might have got from another team. So I appreciate the fact that David Stearns played the game through the media, through Boris, and even he was taking shots from Met fans like, oh, this is ridiculous. You can't let the young kids get, or at least Vientos, get these at-bats. It doesn't make sense. People who were starting to kill him, the same fans that wanted them to play the kids, were getting mad because it was obvious JD Martinez was the right guy to get. So, in my opinion, JD Martinez made sense. David Stearns worked it perfectly, and we got our bat. We just have to wait at least a week or two until we get him.
And that does suck, right? Like, he's not going to start on opening day, but you know, at this point, you take it when you can. So I was kind of curious how the rest of the roster, especially the bench, is going to shake out, and that's why I thought Vientos was going to stay up with the big club. I know he only has one option left, which is sort of tricky to navigate at that point. But I also think when you look at the Mets bench, like, they still could use a power bat off the bench, which is why I'm still kind of confused on why they sent Vientos down. Okay, he wasn't going to get the consistent at-bats, even with JD Martinez coming up, understood. But now you look at the bench and you're like, well, we don't have a power bat off the bench in pinch hit situations. You got Tyrone Taylor. He has some sneaky pop to his bat. That's what we've been saying all offseason long, and I'm going to stick by that statement. But he's not no Mark Vientos in terms of putting the ball over the fence, right? So I don't know. That's where I was kind of just squirrely on, seeing Vientos go down. And also, I've been saying all offseason, like, I just don't understand what value he has at the AAA level that he hasn't already proved there. And maybe they are going to go and just put him every day at third base in AAA level and just be like, if you come back up and you take Brett Beatty's spot, then more power to you. Maybe that's what they're doing. I don't know. I think Brett Beatty has also looked better over recent weeks. Obviously, in the month of March to end of spring training, he's looked better. But that sort of last spot, and by the way, we're going to talk about Zach Short as well. I'm thrilled that he's on the roster. But the bench just lacks power in my mind. And that's where I thought Vientos could have been a perfect supplement to that. Even if he was riding the pine, just go ahead and give him an at-bat at two to see if he can knock one over the fence. That's what I would at least thought. But
Hey. I was shocked about that too, but I think it's two reasons. Number one, last year when he came off the bench, he batted under 200 and didn't only hit, I believe, 2 home runs. And he came off the bench about, I think, 21 times, if I'm not mistaken. I think I checked that. I think it was a little over 20 at-bats that he came off the bench last year and was terrible. Coming in cold, he just wasn't good at all. And I think that was a concerning factor to keep him on the bench, where you don't trust that bat coming off the bench. And I see what the Mets are doing. So since that plan of playing the young kids, they clearly want veteran type guys on the bench where they can bring up Short in a spot. Tyrone Taylor, a lot of these guys that are veteran guys that they trust can put a quality at bat. I don't think they trust Vientos with that. And you can't put him up in the 7th inning where you need a hit. Do you trust Vientos to get a hit? Not cold off the bench, and I think that's the issue too. And I do think they wanted him to stay sharp just in case of whatever reason. If somebody's not performing well, look, if Zach Short is looking bad the first couple of weeks of the season and Vientos is knocking the ball around, there's your change. You put Vientos in Zach Short's spot and you call it a day. So I think that's probably the reason. I think that. And I also think the comment that Vientos made, I know there was a lot of good comments, but he says, oh, I have a chip on my shoulder. That was one of the quotes that he says that, yes, I'm not happy, but I have a chip on my shoulder. Where was that chip when they were basically giving you the job? Because people are gonna be like, "Oh, you can't kill him for not doing well in spring training at bats." That's his moment to shine when you're facing subpar pitching. You can bat 400 and fool us into thinking that you're a good hitter against bad pitching in spring training. And you didn't even do that when the Mets were trying to give you the job. And you couldn't even have that quote unquote chip on your shoulder. That scared me. And I guarantee you that rubbed a lot of the Mets front office the wrong way. And they already don't like Vientos' attitude. It was a problem last year in the organization, and why they actually sent him down and didn't bring him up as quickly as possible was because of the attitude as well. Now, I like the fact that JD Martinez put his arm around him, talked to him. That's good. But that chip on his shoulder, you're a professional now. To win a job, you have to earn it, regardless if they think they're going to give it to you. Zach Short wasn't even on the 40-man. This guy was basically useless. Wasn't even going to make the team. Everybody didn't even put up his name as a spot on the roster, and he made the team. That shows you that if you do your job and you perform well, regardless of who's in the game, they're going to look at you and you might get an opportunity. And Zach Short basically took Vientos' spot, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, and there you go. And that should have showed Vientos right there that it wasn't JD Martinez taking your spot. You would have had a roster spot if you showed any inkling of any sort of offensive awareness anywhere besides power. We know the power is there. I'm sorry. I don't care that he hit an opposite field home run here or there and showed power and hit the most home runs on the Mets. What does that mean? That means you finally got it right in the barrel of the bat against bad pitching at certain points, but you were still batting what, 210? That didn't prove nothing to me. High strikeouts, still the walk problem, no walk problem. I think that's the biggest problem. Zach Short showed quality at bats, showed that he can be trusted coming off the bench, play multiple positions, batting, having over 800 OPS. That's important. And David Stearns has shown you what's important, at least in his first stint with the Mets. He likes guys that they can trust and who is consistent. Vientos is not that.
And Vientos also stated something when he just completely looked like dejected in his interview after the signing, which I understand his job just got took, right? He knew it. We knew it. His mom probably knew it. Like everybody knew it that JD Martinez was coming to take his spot. So he was visibly just down in the interview, like anybody would be. But he also said that he felt like he made the most of his opportunities. Like, I don't like that answer because that's just lying to everybody, including yourself, right? I even think Mark Vientos thinks that he made the most of his opportunities. The whole chip on the shoulder kind of thing, like, okay, it is what it is, whatever. But stating that you made the most of your opportunities during your time in spring training, that's just simply not true. So that was the part of the answer that he gave in his interview that I was just like, all right, you lost me there, kid. That's what did it for me. But nonetheless, no. As we transition, because we can turn this into an hour talking about JD Martinez and Mark Vientos. As we transition to Zach Short, great story. I think he's 27 years old, coming from the Tigers organization. When the Tigers played the Mets literally a couple days ago, I was listening. I had to listen to their broadcast on the MLB.com app because I guess SNY wasn't covering it. And they were just raving about Zach Short as a player, man. Like both his bat and his defense, right, has come to play and has come alive in spring training. And also, you hear about the just touching story about him just hearing that he lost his grandmother a couple of hours before he found out that he made the team. Like, that's just like such a feel good story. And I'm not trying to sit here and say, like, you got to give the feel good stories like, you're not giving a guy a roster spot because, he just lost a family member. That's not what I'm trying to insinuate at all. But nonetheless, I think what he put together was a competent and a complete spring training, something that Vientos did fail to do. And I, like you, agree, Rob, that I think Zach Short definitely did take Mark Vientos' roster spot. Because I think even if JD Martinez was on this team, if Mark Vientos proved that he was an all-around complete hitter, right? I'm talking gap to gap, not just home runs. One, maybe we're not even talking about JD Martinez, but even if we're still talking about JD Martinez, we're definitely not talking about Zach Short because Mark Vientos would still be on this bench. That's what I think.
Yeah, and he would have had a spot on the roster, regardless of Martinez is here or not. He would have been on this roster. And that's what I don't think Vientos understands. You lost a position that you had from day one of spring training, the DH spot. Guaranteed. That's what they were telling you. Now, behind the scenes, who knows? But you had 2 opportunities to make this team. The DH role, actually 3. The DH role, the third base role, or a bench role. You couldn't win either of those. You got beat up by Brett Beatty, who he's been playing better, but he didn't rock spring training world around and open up a ton of eyes. He looked better, but wasn't something that you couldn't beat him out for the job at third base. The DH spot, there was no competition. It was him. Choi Voigt was just to probably push Mark Vientos a little bit more. And he couldn't win the DH position. That's why they went out to get JD Martinez. And then your last shot was to make a bench spot, which your lack of versatility on the defensive side, which you're not good at third base, you're not good at first base, you can't play any middle up the middle positions. So you are a bat that barely hits. 232 average and 56 at bats. 9 RBIs, 5 home runs. That doesn't give me a lot of confidence in you, number one, as a DH, number 2, as a bench spot, because Mark Vientos in a bench spot is absolutely useless. You're not putting them in for defensive purposes late in games. Can you really trust that bat late in the game? Like we just talked about? No. And that's why Zach Short got the job. That's why the Mets signed JD Martinez. And Brett Beatty won the job by default. Not because he was much better, because you weren't good enough. And I don't think he understands that he had 3 opportunities to make this team, and he made 0. That's why he's going to be starting the year in Syracuse, because of that. And Zach Short, congratulations. He deserved it. He earned his spot. Imagine that, Chris. He earned his spot. Nobody was giving you the spot like a Vogelback or Eduardo Escobar, not deserving to be the starting third baseman last year after he was terrible in spring and Brett Beatty was raking. They earned a spot. Give me a guy that earns a spot every single day, regardless of the contract, regardless of the name. If you earn it, you should be on the roster. And Zach Short earned this job when nobody thought he would even get a chance or even sniff the roster on opening day. And now he does. Congratulations to Zach Short.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, like, a lot of people were like, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm going to be convinced of Zach Short to be a complete ball player once the season rolls around, he gets his opportunities. Like, I'm not saying just because we saw good spring training, we are going to see the world from Zach Short, right? But there's really no harm, no foul in terms of giving him this opportunity, right? He earned it. Okay, great. The Mets still have depth in the farm system. I just talked about 2 veterans, and this is like the point where a lot of people want to knock the Mets organization for whatever type of offseason they had this past offseason in terms of getting those B moves, maybe not being as successful over the last couple of years, and the free agents might not want to come and stay in this organization or be a part of this organization. Well, you just have 2 names there, veteran, honestly, at this point, journeymen in this league that can still play because they had decent spring trainings. One had more of a decent spring training than the other, but we know what the other can provide, and that is Jose Iglesias and G-Man Choi. Both can opt out of their contracts and seek opportunities with other teams and probably would get roster spots elsewhere, but you know what? They want to be a part of this organization because it truly looked like, especially from Jose Iglesias, that they had fun in this organization and they enjoyed being a part of it. And that's equally as important in terms of just analyzing it from a fan perspective, that this farm system not only has depth to go along with these prospects that we all see on these lists, but also veteran depth that, let's say, Zach Short doesn't put it all together and he is a DFA candidate, or I'm not sure if he has any options. It doesn't really matter if they send him down. Then you get another guy. Jose Iglesias can come up and make an impact, right? That's important when you analyze these roster spots and who gets them versus who doesn't at the end of the day. So I just want to throw that out there because I think a lot of people see this opening day roster as the end all be all. This opening day roster, if I had to guess, whether it's veteran depth pieces moving around or prospects coming up is going to look a lot different at the end of the year than it did to start, or maybe even midway through, depending on how the Mets do. So that's what I will tell Mets fans as well. This is not like the Mets are glued to this opening day roster. These are the guys who proved it in spring training. And you always hear like, okay, go do well in spring training and win that job. With some teams and some organizations, you can have a killer spring training, but that brand name that is in your position that you outperformed is still going to get that opportunity more often than not, right? No matter if you outperform them in spring training or not. That really has been the case sometimes with the Mets in the past, but really this year, they deviated away from that, especially when you talk about a guy like Zach Short making the team. So I'm just happy that we're starting to get those dynamics as well. That's if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, it does. It does. And there's been a lot of talk the last couple of days of camp that Luisano Acuna might get the first chance of making the team or coming up sometime during the season. And I'm curious if it's like if Zach Short doesn't show anything or Vientos is struggling, would they use Luisano Acuna as a bench piece? A guy to come off the bench late in games with, maybe a pinch runner or something like that. Maybe, even for an at bat to get on base, maybe for a bunt hit or something crazy like that. There's been a lot of talk that Luisano Acuna might get the first nod from the minors from one of our prospects, which is interesting considering when you got Williams and Gilbert and all those other guys. But it's going to be very interesting to see. But it's basically, if the Mets are playing well, you're not going to be talking about, Gilbert and Acuna and, guys like that. You're not going to worry about them because these guys are going to be doing their jobs. So I think that's the important thing. So, like I said, they got to get off to a good start, or this fan base is going to turn on them rather quickly. Especially if the Mets are struggling prior to JD Martinez arriving, because what you don't want is to be struggling the first week of the season, and they're going to rush JD Martinez to this lineup because maybe the offense is struggling. The pitching is good, but the offense is struggling. And they're going to be like, hey, listen, I know you only got a week of spring training of minor league games. Let's go. We need you. We don't want that. I'm not saying you got to go 10-2, which would be great. If you go 7-5, 8-5, 8-6, or something like that, somewhere around 500, maybe a little bit better, I think you're okay. You can deal with the growing pains, I guess, of the season, which with either the offensive side or the pitching side. So speaking of lineups, we know that the four guys, once JD Martinez is here, it's going to be the Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso, Martinez. But now that Martinez is not going to be there for at least 10 days, and Vientos is not there, what is the lineup going to be, at least the top four? It's going to be very interesting because McNeil has been batting cleanup in a couple of times this spring training, and that scares the living shit out of me. I do not want McNeil anywhere near the cleanup spot. It's very odd because I don't know where they're going to go, at least until Martinez comes up. What do you think, Chris?
I think that's what it's going to be. I think McNeil is going to be that cleanup guy. That's what I think. Unless they just flip-flop Pete and McNeil and have McNeil bat in the 3 spot. But the thing is like, I like Pete getting that extra at bat and getting up in the first inning, right? I like that. That's why I like him in that 3rd spot. But nonetheless, yeah, I don't know. It's not feasible to have McNeil in the cleanup spot. I bet you they try it out. I'd rather see, when I talked about all off season, I don't want to see Alvarez batting behind Pete Alonso just to not to put that pressure on him
That's what I think they're gonna
right
do.
away as a young player. I'd almost rather just see that than McNeil, right? Just have Alvarez bat 4th and McNeil bat 5th, and that's how you approach it. But the bigger question here for me is also like, and I do think like I would not be shocked, Rob, if we do see McNeil come opening day in that 4 spot. I don't like it. You don't like it. It is what it is. But what's going to be interesting to me is how they play it with Starling Marte. Because Starling Marte has been abysmal in spring training. He's been absolutely horrible. He looks off. And I simply don't know what to do with Starling Marte. And I'm not saying that he's going to have a bad season because he struggled in spring training. But everything that I look at, like we've seen a large enough sample size out of him in spring training to be like, okay, this is bad news. His bat looks slow. He's beating everything into the ground, to the pull side, whether it's to the pitcher, the shortstop, or the third baseman. And he's not going to leg it out like he did in 2022 because he's coming off a double groin surgery. So that's a big, big worry for me. And I'm more curious as to what their backup plan is for Starling Marte. I actually went on the podcast, Believe in Mets with Nick. Does a great job over there. Make sure you go check him out on YouTube, Spotify, all that good stuff. We were talking about what the likely option would be for the New York Mets in an event that Starling Marte doesn't perform, gets off to an abysmal start, or just simply gets injured again. And is that going to be Tyrone Taylor until the service time manipulation is up before a Drew Gilbert can come up or a Jet Williams can come up? And that's where I was sort of thinking, like, I'm not sure who the first prospect is going to be to come up. And that's why I was thinking more of like a Drew Gilbert or a Jet Williams because of that outfield capability. Now, I understand that if that happens in April or even early May before you hit that service time gap, obviously the Mets are not going to rush a prospect, especially one that they see being a part of this organization for the foreseeable future to get that extra year on the tail end of that rookie contract. That's understandable. So I think it would be Tyrone Taylor. But something to monitor if you're in the chat and if you're a Mets fan is Starling Marte. We named him as an X factor along with Jeff McNeil, two guys that had decently subpar seasons. I think Marte having more of a subpar season in 2023. But how is Starling Marte going to bounce back? Because I did not feel comfortable in what I saw out of him in spring training. But inevitably, to round this all out in the lineup construction, when JD Martinez is starting off in the minor leagues, before he comes up, I hope it's Alvarez batting cleanup because I think that's the most viable spot for him. Unless, like we said, you want to just flip-flop Lindor and Pete, I think that would be serviceable as well. I would have Jeff McNeil bat too. My ideal lineup is Nimmo, McNeil, Pete, Alvarez, and then fifth spot. I don't know at that point. Maybe Marte, probably not. I just went in on Marte. So at that point, you'd probably have to bat Brett Beatty fifth. I don't know. It's going to be a crapshoot. And then, like I said, this is just a testament to the fact that this lineup, there's so many question marks that JD Martinez is able to alleviate if you're a Mets fan.
Chris, I think you muted out. Your mic went out. All right, when Chris comes back with the sound. Nope.
Back.
Yep, there you go. You good.
Okay, cool. I was just saying to round out my sentiment here is that there's so many question marks that JD Martinez alleviates if you're Carlos Mendoza or whoever's putting these lineups together with him on this roster than without. That is how huge this signing would be. Did you hear my top four before JD Martinez comes up?
No.
Okay. If before JD Martinez comes up, I'm thinking you got Nimmo, Lindor, Nimmo, McNeil,
Okay.
Lindor, Pete, Alvarez. I think McNeil bats in that 2 spot. I think that's where I'm comfortable with McNeil. I don't want to see him at 4. I think he's in that 2 spot.
I think they're gonna put Lindor in that 2 spot. Only reason why
so too.
Because they've done that a lot this spring, and he really performed well last year. Once they moved him to the 2 spot, that's when he really started to get going. In like the late part of May, they started to put him in the 2 hole a lot, and that's when he really took off. So I would think they're probably going to leave that 1, 2, 3 in Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso, and that 4th spot. I think is going to be. I think because they're going to do it, because they have been doing it in spring, it put McNeil in the cleanup spot, which is probably some analytical bullshit that thinks that it's going to work. I don't think so, because I think it's going to get to McNeil's head because he's very, very, his mind doesn't work in that way. I think once they put him in the 4th spot, he's going to get power happy, and that's the worst type of McNeil you want. Because he's in a cleanup spot, you think he's going to have to hit for power. The smart move is to put Alvarez 4th. Look, Alvarez is confident. He is a guy that I don't think he's scared of the moment, and he's only getting better. You see how good he has been in spring. I mean, just take away the defensive side. He just looks like a better hitter, not just a power guy at the plate. And I think the Mets have enough confidence in him, at least early on, maybe the first series against the Brewers at home, to put him in the cleanup spot. It makes the most sense. If you want to put McNeil fifth, I'm fine with, and then go from there. Maybe Marte, Beatty, or whatever, how else you want to do it. I think 6 through 9, I don't really care how you maneuver it. It doesn't matter to me. 1 through 5 is where I'm really, well, at least 3 through 5, because I think one is obviously Nimmo. 2, I think it's going to be Lindor. 3 and 4, I think is going to be a little bit of a question mark, but obviously Alonso is going to be in one of those. So it's going to be very interesting to see on opening day. Look, what I don't want on opening day is what we had last year. I was at the tailgate in Miami, drinking a lot, and I get the Verlander news. I don't want none of that crap. The first home opener since 2018. The Mets haven't been opening at home since 2018. 2020, yes, no fans. So first time since, remember, and Pete Alonso, this is his first home opener on opening day for the first game of the season, because 2018 was the last time he wasn't up yet. So he talked about that. So Met fans, get pumped, right? Cheer for everybody. Even if you want to boo somebody, right? Cheer them. Like, enjoy it. It might be on Friday, just so everybody knows, because one of my sales reps, Mets ticket reps guy, texts me and saying, plan wisely, because he don't think it's going to happen on Thursday. Just for all you guys out there who might be going to the game or doing something for the game, Thursday might not happen. They're already talking about postponing it until Friday. So my ticket rep just let me know, because they sent me over the parking pass as a season ticket holder. So just so everybody knows that it's looking more like Friday than Thursday.
What, double,
sorry, I went on that.
header, or is Friday
No,
scheduled to be an
they're
off
just gonna because Friday there's no game, unless So he just let me know. He just emailed me, so because I was curious of what he was doing with the parking pass for me, and he just emailed me. So I wanted to, I guess, let you guys know if anybody's going to the game. But sorry to go off course, but I just got the email.
What's Saturday's forecast going to be like, Rob? Because I'm going to be there Saturday. You know that. Everyone knows that in this chat. What's Saturday's forecast?
No, it's not going to rain. 57 degrees, so we're going to have a nice day.
Good.
That's good.
Let's go.
When are you coming in?
Why Friday?
Okay, cool. Because I just wanted to know, because I'm probably going to come straight from work, because I work overnight, so I'm going to come straight from work and just roll into the parking lot early. So just let me know, or maybe I'll get there before you. I'll let you know where I'm parked, so we can do our setup for our pregame.
Let's do it. Awesome.
I'll
hit you up.
2 bullpen spots for 3 pitchers, and it's coming down to Sean Reed-Foley, Michael Talkin, and Johan Ramirez. And I wrote down the ERAs for spring training, and I thought it would be fun to figure out, even because I put that as a poll in the chat. Sean Reed-Foley, a 4.5 ERA in 5 games, 7 strikeouts. Talkin, 0 ERA in 5 games, 7 strikeouts. And Ramirez, 1.80 ERA, 7 games with 11 strikeouts. So, Chris, if you were the manager and the brain trust of the New York Mets, who are your 2 that are coming up north on the opening day roster?
We got 2 of these 3?
Yep.
Oh, man. I think you have to put Tonkin on here by himself, because he's a different type of pitcher than Ramirez and Sean Reed-Foley. So I think that with that nasty sweeper that he possesses, obviously he threw up zeros in 5 games. You just heard it from Rob. Give me Michael Tonkin. I know David Stearns loves himself some slider sweeper action from his pitchers, especially those bullpen guys. So I think Michael Tonkin, absolutely. And this is tough. This is tough, because I like Sean Reed-Foley. I know he's a bulldog on that mound, but can you argue with what Johan Ramirez has done in spring training? He also pumps high 90s fastballs. He's up to 96, 97. He also has some lethal off speed. I like Sean Reed-Foley as a pitcher. You know what? Give me Sean Reed-Foley, man. I'm saying Tonkin to Sean Reed-Foley. It kills me too, because Johan Ramirez was such a stud of a find. from the White Sox organization. David Stearns, another one of those just guru type moves from David Stearns that no one talked about when it happened. But this guy, this is so tough, Rob. Why are we getting put on the spot like this? Okay, give me Sean Reed Foley and Michael Tonkin. My original thought is what my final answer is going to be. I like Sean Reed Foley. I know that there's some injury concerns there as well. He was dealing with some soreness on his arm or whatnot. I understand that. I got to see what his update is. But if he's healthy, if he's ready to go, I like that sheer just bulldog mentality up there. He's fierce.
Okay.
He throws mid-90s fastball as well, and he just seems to get the ball by hitters no matter what. He also has been there in Queens before, and he's been with the big league club. And I would say Sean Reed, Foley, and Tonkin, but I wouldn't argue at all with Yohan Ramirez. I think it's very hard to argue about with the spring that he had. That's just my sort of gut feeling, though.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the earning it route, and I'm gonna go with Tonkin and Ramirez only because if what I've seen from what the Mets front office has been doing, they've been giving the people who earned it. And somebody actually texted me in the Mets group chat and said, why don't you just get rid of Drew Smith and let all three of these guys get on the roster? Well, because Drew Smith is the type of guy that teams love. Front offices, analytics, they love their arms, his type of arm. And I think they still have somewhat little bit of confidence in Drew Smith still that he can actually put it all together. And that's why I think Drew Smith's going to be on there and not these three guys. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Tonkin and Ramirez just because they're earning it. And like you said about Tonkin, he's got that sweeper. He's a different type of pitcher than what the Mets kind of have in the bullpen now. And I think Ramirez, I think the live arm, the high velocity fastball, and the nasty stuff, and the strikeout type of ability, I think is going to be crucial for this Mets bullpen. And I think it's going to be Tonkin and Ramirez. But I think Carlos said that Foley is sent down, so I guess they made their decision. I didn't see that yet, but if that's
I didn't see that yet. I think Carlos might be just predicting that's what
okay.
he's saying, but it could be. It could be official. I don't know. Like I said, I've been away this weekend, so I know Sean Reed Foley struggled. I know he came back from the bicep soreness that he was dealing with. We'll see if that impacts his sort of the roster decision the Mets make. But I know he struggled in his first action in spring training since coming back. Listen, I don't have anything against Yohan Ramirez. The guy's a stud. If you give me him over Sean Reed Foley, great, let's roll, because I don't worry about this bullpen when I talk about the New York Mets in 2024. That's an area that I'm seriously not worried about. And this depth, to have a conversation about who's going to be getting these last couple spots and have these guys assessing their performance in spring training, it's a beautiful thing because the Mets are in good shape either way, and they have guys as well in the minor leagues to come up and fill those spots if needed as well. And also, I guess the Mets are in love with cash consideration, sending Austin Adams out there to Oakland to die, more or less, for some good old cash consideration. So that also did happen as well, because that was a name that I was like, is he going to make it? He's tough on righties. He has that awkward delivery, but inevitably he's going to Oakland. So lots of stuff going on, man. I'm happy. And this roster battles, it's a great problem to have, like Carlos just said in the chat. Absolutely.
Yeah. And, they needed that cash considerations from Oakland because they got to go get Montgomery next, baby. Let's go. Joel said it earlier in the chat in the beginning of the stream. Are you going to bring up Montgomery next? You're damn right I'm bringing up Montgomery. You thought I wasn't going to say anything about Montgomery. You're damn right. And I'll tell you this right now, the Mets are one of the teams that gave an offer to Jordan Montgomery. I can guarantee you that. It might not be the best offer, but I think they gave him an offer. I think the Mets will go up to 3 years, probably with an opt-out in year 1 or 2. I think the Mets are trying to go after Montgomery, but they're not going to go over the limit. They're going to have a price, and they're going to stick to it, just like they did with JD Martinez. I don't think they're going to get Jordan Montgomery, but I think it's going to come out once he signs somewhere other than the Mets. You're going to hear that the Mets made him an offer. And some people will be like, oh, you should have just got him regardless. But I think the Mets like their pitchers. I think they like their rotation. And I think they like their depth as well. And Montgomery might, is probably better than most of them. But it's hard to kill him when Severino looks healthy. Regardless of how he pitched, he looked healthy.
He was great.
He looks healthy. Great. And I didn't even know that he had problems sleeping
Yeah.
The last couple of years, and the Yankees got him a sleep specialist, a therapist, and he used it throughout the offseason, and then was still using it, and it kind of like helped him get more hours of sleep and rested and feels more able to recover, which is important for a pitcher. If that's the case, Severino looks great, and I'm not saying that he's gonna just be an ace type stuff, but if he's healthy, there's no reason why he can't pitch to a 3 ERA because he has that type of stuff. The ease he throws with that fastball, and just he looks like he dominates every batter he faces. If he can stay predominantly healthy, man, that's going to mean all the difference in the world for this rotation, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I've been telling everybody on this in this chat. We've been having discussions about it. Like that is the guy that needs to show up in a big way for the New York Mets in this rotation, especially with Kodai Senga out, because I think a lot of people, whether he's an ex-Yankee or just the statistics that he put up last season wasn't pretty. I think a lot of people have been writing off Luis Severino, and obviously he needs to put it together, and he actually needs to be out there in order to show what he's got. But just the sheer talent of this guy, who's also happens to be in the prime of his career still, let's not forget about that, is definitely in line to have a major bounce back season. And he's going to be a re-signed candidate for this rotation next year when spots become available. Sean Manaea also looking pretty good recently as well. Like to see what he can put together over the course of 162. I think, honestly, we talked about it all the time. A lot of things need to go right for this roster to be like up there in sort of contention for a front end wild card spot, maybe that first wild card spot. I think maybe second or third is more realistic, but I think that we're starting to see the capability of the New York Mets. There could be a perfect storm brewing for the New York Mets to make some noise this season. And with those lowered expectations, right, that everyone's talking about, we talked about it all off season. The Mets themselves even talk about it, lowering their expectations. Not always a bad thing because we haven't been under that scrutiny, and the Mets front office has been able to work in silence, right? David Stearns has put together just like quiet master classes, and this JD Martinez signing is just the latest one, right? We're talking about all the bullpen guys that are battling for these spots. Also, Talkin and Ramirez coming over this offseason. We talk about Jordan Montgomery. The Mets quietly, for all we know, the Mets are talking to Jordan Montgomery right now, and we don't even know it. Like, that would be absolutely massive because a lot of people point out that I pointed out this issue before as well. In 2025, you have rotation spots that you need to cover. So if you give Jordan Montgomery a short-term deal, I've been on record saying that he's not an ace, but he covers one of those rotation spots, and he's definitely serviceable from what we saw last season in the World Series run for the Texas Rangers. So this is a unique offseason that we're closing on to begin this season, but I think it's been one that was definitely necessary because I still think it accomplished the goal of a reset, so to speak, for the New York Mets. And you also have someone in the organization, to your credit, Rob, that you said earlier, that's come in, and it's not going to be a yes man to everyone around the league because his boss is the richest owner in baseball. Enough's enough. You need to set limitations, and you need to show the rest of the league that, yes, Steve Cohen is the richest owner in baseball, but you're playing our game. We're not playing your game, or else you can just walk out that door and see you later. We'll be fine with whoever comes in and replaces your potential spot. I love it. I absolutely love it. That's New York energy right there. I love it.
Yeah, it's a dangerous combination to have the richest owner in baseball and a guy that is running things for this organization that is smart enough and not afraid to step in and say, hey, Steve, we can get this guy without giving him what he wants. I know you got the money, but why do you got to give him $20 million that he's asking for when I know we can get him down to lower than $15 million? I think that was the conversation the whole time because there was a quote about a week and a half before Martinez signed with the Mets that Steve Cohen says to David Stearns, you got the okay to go after JD Martinez. If that was the case, he would have been signed for probably $15+ million. But because David Stearns knows the way Boras works and just the way he methodically went through this process shows you that he's not just a small market guy that everybody loved to call small market Stearns. He's smart. Now, there will be times where you have to bite the bullet and to get the guy you want, you're going to have to overspend. And I think Stearns knows that. He said that in many press conferences, interviews over the course of the offseason. He knows that. But when you don't have to, and I said this a couple of weeks ago when people were killing me about Martinez, you don't have to overpay for a guy when you know you got the guy over a barrel when it comes to that. And I kept on saying it, and I was getting killed for it. Chris, you couldn't even believe it when I was saying it. And you went back on me, which is great, because you know what? I was starting to not believe it. David Stearns knew what he was doing. He knew that money wasn't going to get anywhere near close to what Martinez was going to get from anywhere else, regardless, once he turned down the Giants. I think if the Giants were still involved, maybe Stearns might have, pushed it a little bit and says, all right, we'll give you what you want. But because the Giants, I still believe if the Giants jumped out of it, I think David Stearns was like, great, I'll take my time. I'll call up Boris, says, hey, how's 13 million? No, we don't want that. And kept on hanging up on him. And then it turned out to what the contract was. And I think that's the way David Stearns and Steve Cohen is going to work this. When they need to put all their chips in the middle of the table and spend that extra money when needed for particular players like Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, whoever else they might go after this season's over, they will. But when you don't have to, why spend more when you don't have to? When you go to a grocery store, right, and you know that item's going on sale, are you going to spend $10 on it because you need it now? Or are you going to wait tomorrow when it's $6.99 and get it for a few dollars less, right? It's the same game. Boris used to win that game all the time. Now, Boris is not winning anymore. A lot of these GMs, a lot of these teams are not stupid anymore. They're not falling for Boris's nonsense anymore. And they're learning how to manipulate Scott Boras now. Now, that might change with Juan Soto and Pete Alonso next offseason, but those are the creme of the creme of Major League Baseball. You're not talking about guys that, Blake's now Cy Young, but guys that are probably, I would say, a tick below that, and maybe even a tier 3 player. Scott Boras is not winning that anymore. And I think David Stearns read the room and read the entire offseason well, where nobody's really overpaying. Early on in the offseason, some players, some pitchers got well above market value. But he realized that later in the game, you're going to get a discount, and they got a huge discount. So I'm happy 3 days until opening day. We got that extra bat. Yes, it's going to take about a week or two to get him to the Mets lineup. But I feel confident. And I'm not going to ask for your win total because I'm assuming, Chris, you're probably going to do a video about the Mets win total now, because it's going to be adjusted from what we said a couple of weeks ago. And I think it was in the low 80s for both of us, if I'm not mistaken. I think in my opinion, I'm not going to go crazy because that's ridiculous. I think Martinez can swing in the W column at least 3 wins. At least. And I think that's what my low 80s win total was. Adding 3 wins to that puts them right in the middle of that second, possibly second, definitely third wild card spot.
Yeah, I mean, we both said low 80s, right? I think I was at 81, 82. Now I'm thinking more mid 80s.
Yeah.
Probably will speak on it at some point as well, before the season actually kicks off this week. So make sure you guys are tuning into the pre-recorded episodes. Also, by the way, we haven't mentioned, make sure you hit that thumbs up on both of the streams here tonight. Hit that thumbs up. And we appreciate everybody commenting. And, if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you subscribe as well. But yeah, no, I think that JD Martinez definitely changes the ball game in a great way. I'm not going to go overboard and say the Mets are going to be winning high 80s, early 90s wins, like in the win column. That's not what's going to happen. JD Martinez also, we have to sort of, I guess, pump the brakes a little bit in terms of what our expectations are on the win total in the win column when he's out there, because last year he played 103 games for the Dodgers. This is not a guy that's going to play 120 plus games anymore at this point in his career. There's going to be some load management to his game. I mentioned this in my stream on Friday. There's going to be some days where he's completely healthy, but he needs the day off or 2 days off back to back because he simply just can't do that anymore in his career, given what the injuries that he sustained, which is perfectly fine. That's okay. The Mets just having that type of bat, right? And he can always come into the game as a pinch hitter if the Mets need him later on in the ball game, right? That's where he's serviceable as well. Yeah, this team is going to be good. They're going to be competing for a wild card spot. I'm curious as to what they're going to do. Let's say the Mets are in a wild card spot or just barely there, maybe 1 or 2 games out come the deadline. Are they seriously going to make major moves to push the envelope, or are they just going to sort of ride the wave and see if the team that they have on paper at that point is going to make a push into that playoff spot or maintain that playoff spot? Because like that is also when you have this sort of plan and you've been going about this offseason a certain type of way, that's a forward decision that you're going to have to sort of look forward to and sort of make accordingly. So I don't know what they're going to do there. Maybe that's a conversation that we pick up on a rainy day in the future if the Mets actually get off to a hot start. But that's sort of like my forward thinking now. Okay, you did go get JD Martinez, right? Jordan Montgomery. Let's just say, Lord forbid, if they do go out there and sign Jordan Montgomery, right? I'm not thinking it's going to happen. I don't think you think it's going to happen. But just say some unique and odd reason the Mets decide to go out and get Jordan Montgomery at the price that they really like. What do you do at the deadline if this team is in a position to compete? And even without Jordan Montgomery, like if that still holds true with the roster as is, let's say with no Jordan Montgomery, do you still make those necessary additions and trade off one of those younger prospects or two to make this team competitive when you know the Dodgers are going to be there, you know the Braves are going to be there, maybe even the Phillies? What would you do just before we round out the stream? Because I do have to hop off here soon.
Yep.
What would you do? I'm curious.
Well, David Stearns did say that he's willing to give up prospects for young, controllable pitching. If there's one of those guys like a Freddie Peralta available or a pitcher of that elk with years still on the contract and has control, I think he would do it in the pitching department. I guess it depends on what they need at the deadline, or at least around the deadline if they're in a playoff spot. If they need a bullpen arm, they'll go out and get a bullpen arm. I don't think they're going to go crazy and give 3 top 10 prospects to go out and get a pitcher. But I think they will do serviceable to, I would say, like mid-level moves to make the team better. Because it depends. Like if the lineup's really good and the pitching is subpar, you're going to try to get a solid pitcher on the market. Right. That's what I would think. Right. Start a pitcher or bullpen. That's where I'm thinking right there. So yeah, I think they would do enough to satisfy the fans in what they need at the deadline, if that's the case, right, if they're in a playoff spot.
Hey, are we going to address the elephant in the room here after the Souls series is now over? Are we going to address the elephant in the room around the MLB, or are we not going to speak on that?
That useless statement that Otani gave?
Yeah. Now let's say that for a rainy day. I know you can go in on this topic
Suspend him. I'm so sick of them kissing his ass. Jesus, the guy bet on sports, which is okay because he would get a fine. But you can't tell me that you lost $4.5 million out of that was sent to a bookie and you didn't know it was happening. Look, we're not millionaires. I know when $4.50 is out of my account. I know right away. You get alerts on your phone. If there's a suspicious activity of a lot of money, I'm assuming when there's a lot of money coming out of his accounts, right away his financial managers, the banks are going to notify you. So if you didn't know that, then you're just an idiot. You're not that stupid. All right. You might not know the language, but money is universal, my friend. You are at least somewhat guilty. And the problem is Rob Manfred is so afraid that Shohei Otani is involved enough where he has to make a decision on that. And did you hear the Cubs and the Dodgers next year might be playing in Japan to open up the season? So you know that's the rumor. So you know he can't have this blow up in his face. If Rob Manfred doesn't do something about Otani, it's going to be worse than the steroid era. It's going to be worse than the Astros cheating, trash can banging. because of the fact
It's
that you're allowing one of your players to manipulate possible gains for betting purposes. That's a problem.
Yeah, it's definitely suspicious. I don't know the ins and outs, and I don't want to make assumptions here without having all the facts. I never try to do that, but it's very suspicious. We know that he's never been one to talk to the media, right? But I think in a situation like this, still not answering any questions about it probably is the best move for the Dodgers and for Otani's sake, right? Just to not slip up in any sort of way. But it does all seem suspicious. And I agree with you. You can't just sit there and say that you just simply didn't know. What's also interesting in terms of Otani's contract, I think the stipulation was that if you fire his translator, he can opt out of the deal too. So who knows what's going to happen? Apparently, there's a lot of like investigations ongoing, and I don't think anything comes of it. I don't think that they're gonna lay the law down on Otani, right? Because he is the face of
They'll find him.
baseball. Yeah, I think that's the worst that comes of it. But this is a tricky situation. I don't know. I just know that I don't know. Did you put a short out there? Because I saw it on YouTube somewhere, and I saw
Yeah,
that, and
it
I
got
just
over
had to laugh to
2,000 views
myself
too.
because
So I killed him.
yeah,
I
yeah,
freaking killed him. And
yeah.
I got some guy that wrote in Japanese and I got it translated. And he was like, in Japan, betting is more understandable and relatable because this is not being like a xenophobe or, towards a certain, ethnicity or race, but there's a huge Asian population that loves to gamble. And I that's not like, throwing it out there that all Asians are gamblers. No, 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 no. I'm just saying I live in a neighborhood that is mostly of the Korean Japanese population, and they have a lot of backdoor gambling areas around here. I see it. They're not afraid to not show it. So no, I'm not saying it's all of them, but it's not as, I guess, frowned upon here like it is here than it is over there. So that might be the other issue with the language barrier and the different way that the cultures are as well.
Yeah,
That's what I was trying to get at.
it could be a cultural thing. I have no idea about that. It's just funny to me that in what Joel just said here. The thing that I have a laugh about it is that, like Joel's saying, if the Mets had Otani on their roster, things would be going a lot differently right now. And just the overall. And I'm not saying he's not getting killed in the media for it because he is, and a lot of people are starting to raise questions, but. This is going to tell us a lot about like Major League Baseball and I guess their sort of marketing strategies here on how much they decide to push the envelope, right?
Yep.
And I don't know. It's a weird situation. I don't know what's going to come of it. I don't think anybody is going to. I don't think anything is going to come of it. But
Yeah, I don't think
nonetheless, I had a little bit of a chuckle when I saw that come out because I'm like, of course, just because of course, man. Like the player that is the face of baseball right now, something like this like would come out at this point of the season. So I don't know.
Baseball
Not
puts it
Mets.
on their own way.
Yeah, not Mets related. Obviously, I just wanted to bring it up in the stream, but I do see my Knicks are putting a hurt on the Detroit Pistons right
There
now,
you go.
up by 24. So that's all I have on the Mets, though. This is an exciting time. Opening days is 3 days away, like you see below me. Rob and I are going to be joining forces here on Friday, either Thursday or Friday, looking more like Friday for the opening day. Amazing Mets pregame show, and then we'll also try to do a little bit of an in-person show there on Saturday when we're both there. Hopefully the Wi-Fi or whatever holds up for us to do one. If you see us go live and it's choppy, just know that we're trying our best and we tried our best. But yeah, I couldn't be more excited for this season. It's a beautiful game, this game of baseball, and we had a very up and down off season in terms of the actual content that we can make out of it, right? And the news points and the touch points. We appreciate everybody tuning in with us weekly on a weekly basis. We know, right, that you've been here, whoever's been here in a while chopping it up with us, we know, we see it, and we appreciate you. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you want a nice little CP New York Sports free shirt sent over to you enter my giveaway. I'll probably be making a live stream video either Wednesday or Thursday announcing the 2 winners that I'm going to be giving the shirts to. I'll send them directly to you as well. And we'll go about it that way. So I appreciate everybody watching. Darren, I appreciate the support always. Ricardo, I appreciate the support always. I even got Josh in here, who's a Yankees fan here supporting, entered my giveaway as well. So I appreciate everyone in the chat. It means a lot. And we're finally here. We see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that is opening day. Let's go Mets, everyone.
Absolutely, and I will be getting the Brave fans soon, and the Philly fans soon, and definitely the Dodger fans. Dodger fans have been quiet on my channel. They'll pop up during the season for sure, since we play them in
PSF, Rob, PSF.
Oh, right, that's right. Pro Sports Fans app, download it right away, because if you enjoy Chris's content and my content and us collaborating together, we'll be doing it very, very soon. I'm assuming we're going to do the Mets season preview in a day or two on YouTube and on the Pro Sports Fans app as our first collaboration on the app. Right, Chris?
Let's do that Wednesday. I got my tripod little setup coming in on Wednesday, so let's do that.
Awesome. All right, great. And I also just got my wireless microphone in for us for our opening for our pregame show. So make sure you download the app, guys. Pro Sports Fans app, PSF. They got all types of sports, not just baseball, and live streams with all the media casts, including me and Chris. So we're going to be doing that, simulcasting with YouTube and PSF. So with that said, guys, Chris, any other words before we go?
No, like I said, I appreciate everyone in the chat, Stoney, commenting. Thank you all so much for making this experience better. Like I said, 600 plus subscribers on the channel, doing the giveaway. Go to the community tab on my page and enter the giveaway. Like I said, we'll be giving out 2 free shirts, no cost to you. It doesn't matter who you are, even if you're not a fan of the Mets, just enter the giveaway and you get some free merch. I'm so excited for the season. Rob, can't thank you enough for putting everything together. As always, I think what we do is great. The duo that we have here is great. And we'll try to pick up the Mets Roundtable, maybe with some additional members as well here soon. So great things going on. We appreciate everyone being here.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So it's been a great show. Once again, last spring training talk of the offseason. Getting ready for opening day, 3 days away. With that said, have a good night. Let's go Mets. We'll see you next time, guys. Chris, have a great night, buddy. Good night, guys.
Peace. Let's go Mets.
Cause we got ourselves a ball, put the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell, give 'em a hand, and let 'em know you're rooting in the stands. Come on and meet the Mets.